I'd be willing to bet you know a little bit about the Samaritans, but I'd also be willing to bet that you don't know the full story and the full background between the Samaritan people and the Jewish people. So let's talk about it. As a guy who's been in the ministry for over a decade and a half, wow, I'm old. Here's what I know. It's not always feasible to dig super deep into the background and the history of everything in the Bible during a message. There's just not enough time. Generally, sermons last between 25 and 40 minutes depending on the pastor. Now, I'm curious, how long do sermons typically last at your church? Let me know in the comments below. I was curious about our church where I'm one of the teaching pastors, so I did the math. For sermons preached at my church so far in 2021, the average is 33 minutes. Which falls exactly in the middle of that 25 to 40 minute range that I gave you earlier. Pretty good. The reason I bring that up is because if you take the time left in this video and add it to a message, you've added quite a big percentage of time to that message. For instance, if I was preaching on the parable of the Good Samaritan and the sermon was going to be, let's use our average, 33 minutes, adding 8 or so minutes to that message would make the message 41 minutes long or 25% longer. That's why you've never heard the deep history of the Samaritans. It just takes too long to go that deep. So here is that deeper history of the Samaritans and the bitter rivalry between them and the Jewish people. The first time in Scripture that we see the Samaritan people truly presented to us as a people is Ezra chapter 4, where it's recorded that they are in opposition to the reconstruction of Jerusalem after Jews began returning after their Babylonian exile. It starts way back when the nation of Israel split in two under the rule of King Solomon's son, Rehoboam. The northern tribes, the ones who rebelled, formed a nation calling itself Israel, and the southern tribes, the ones who remained, began calling themselves Judah. With the capital city of the once united kingdom of Israel being located in the southern kingdom of Judah, the northern kingdom of Israel made Shechem, an already historic and spiritually significant location. For more on why it was so significant, go ahead and watch this video. It'll be linked below. They made Shechem its new capital. Later, King Omri would move the capital from Shechem to a newly founded city named after the previous landowner, Shemer. It was called Samaria. Over time, the region around the city of Samaria began to be called Samaria itself, much like how we call the area surrounding a major city that city's metro area. Now, at this time, the people of the northern kingdom didn't call themselves Samaritans. They called themselves the nation of Israel. While both kingdoms largely had bad, tyrannical, and evil kings, the northern kingdom had all bad kings. At least the southern kingdom had a few bright spots. King Omri's son, King Ahab, went so far as to establish a temple of Baal in Samaria. Because of all the evil atrocities and idol worship, the northern kingdom of Israel was allowed by God to be conquered by the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians exiled nearly all the surviving inhabitants of Samaria to other locations throughout the empire and resettled a new, non-Israelite population in Samaria. All of this can be read in 2 Kings chapter 17. Why would they remove the natives and resettle a new population? Well, if you're conquering a nation, you don't want the natives to be grouped together in their homeland because they could amass power and they could start a rebellion. But you also don't want that land to go to waste, so you resettle other people there to develop and defend that land. So now the region of Samaria is filled with Assyrians and just a few natives, all of which mostly reject God. Assyrian rule over Samaria lasted for 134 years. All while the southern kingdom of Judah remained independent. All of that changed when the Babylonian Empire conquered both the Assyrian Empire and Judah. Again, wanting to displace the natives, Babylon exiled the residents of Judah, but left the non-native residents of Assyria largely in place. So now we're back where we started in Ezra chapter 4. The Persians who conquered Babylon released the exiled Jews to return to the region of Judah and the city of Jerusalem to rebuild it. Think about this from the Samaritan perspective. For 250 years, your kingdom was a rival to Judah. Just like two high schools in one town become rivals, these two kingdoms battled for supremacy and for which one was the true heir to the nation of Israel. So, a 250-year rivalry, that's longer than the United States has existed. Then, For 134 years, your culture blended with that of Assyria, making the divide between you and Judah that much more pronounced. Then, for 70 years, the people of Judah were gone, exiled away, leaving you as the sole people and rulers of the area. And now, some former residents of Judah have returned and want to establish themselves again. You're not going to want to let that happen. So what do? You take political action to get construction halted. That's what we see in Ezra chapter 4. Then you try intimidation. We see that in Nehemiah 2. Then you try to mount a physical assault. Nehemiah chapter 4. All of that doesn't work, and Jerusalem is reestablished, meaning that your rival is back once again. As we fast forward through human history, the Persian Empire falls to Alexander the Great's Greek Empire. That empire breaks apart for a brief moment of Jewish independence. For more on this, check out this video. I'll make sure it's linked down below. The Jews conquer Samaria and destroy their temple in hopes of unifying the region and the people. But as you can probably guess, the Samaritans did not like that at all. So once we get to the 1st century, during the time of Christ, there's almost 1,000 years of bitter history between these two peoples. There's the hostility because of the shared history. I mean, who were the true people of God? There's hostility because of religious worship differences. The Samaritan woman at the well actually brings this up to Jesus, who was a Jewish rabbi. These hostilities are deep and they go way back into history. Now, usually when you hear this in a message, and I'm not faulting anyone because I've done this same thing, the hostility between these two groups is presented as the Jewish people don't like Samaritans because they were a mixed race. That's not true, and at best it's an oversimplification. The Bible never warns against biracial marriage because of mixing races. There are tons of examples of biracial marriages in the scripture. Moses' marriage was biracial. Rahab was a non-Israelite prostitute that was welcomed into the Israelite community, married an Israelite, and is even an ancestor of Jesus. Even the love story of the Old Testament, the book of Ruth, is about a non-Israelite woman, Ruth, marrying a great Israelite man named Boaz. All warnings against marrying foreign people are because God is urging his people not to slip into idolatry because they married a person who worshiped foreign gods. And it's always stated that way. Moses' foreign wife worshiped the one true God. Rahab worshiped the one true God. Ruth worshiped the one true God. The hostility between the Samaritans and the Jewish people wasn't on racial grounds. It was based on centuries of rivalry and differences in where and how to worship God. Let me be very clear. There is no such thing as race according to the Bible. Acts 17:26 states that from one man, God created all the nations throughout the whole earth. We all have common ancestors, no matter where on the planet we hail from or what we look like. Adam through Noah, we all share that family. There is one race, the human race, created by God on purpose with different genetic dispositions to physical features. That's why Jesus bent over backward to connect to Samaritans. He rebuked his disciples when they had animosity against the Samaritan village. He healed a Samaritan leper. He used a Samaritan as the hero of his parable. He praised a Samaritan for his gratitude. He shared the good news with a Samaritan woman. He even hung out for a while afterwards in Samaria teaching the good news. But to top it all off, here's what Jesus said to his disciples just before he ascended into heaven. You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, the hub of Judaism, and in all of Judea, the home of the Jewish people, and Samaria. Yeah, those people you don't like, you're going to reach those people, and to the end of the whole earth, everybody, everywhere. Hey, I hope you learned something new in this video. If you did, would you please consider sharing it? And hey, I'd also like to know, what was something new that you learned about the Samaritans in this video? I know we're pretty deep in this video. Hopefully you're still watching, but let me know in the comments below. It really helps me. And be sure that you subscribe so that you can catch the next Bible Tidbits video when it drops on Thursday. Before we go, I want to tell you about Lifeword. Lifeword is a fantastic organization that uses media to reach the entire world with the good news of Christ. If that's the kind of thing that you're into, and I hope you are, make sure that you're following them on all of your social accounts like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. That way you can stay encouraged and up to date on the work that they're doing all around the world. You can even follow them right here on YouTube by clicking this little thing, hovering right there. There we go. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time. Grace and peace.